We streaming?
Yeah, it's a stream bot's in here.
Oh, great. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, great. All right. So let's start with the Tether hack. Got the blockchain.info with the latest block height, and that will show up on the video as well in the chat. So you can see the latest hash of the block height. And then you've got the Tether critical announcement that was put out on after the hack on the 19th. Okay, so let's start. So it was about 30.9 million USDT that was removed from the Tether Treasury wallet. That is a hot wallet. It is a multi-sig, but it's one of one. So it's a single signature. And 30.95 million or so USDT were moved out by an attacker to an address starting 16TG2R. So a couple of people have been asking what happened to the USD that represent those USDT. So the answer to that question is that the funds were not moved from the bank account to purchase those tokens initially. So they were just created in the Treasury wallet or the hot wallet for Tether on the server, waiting to be allocated. In this case, they were due to be allocated to Bitfinex for their hot wallet. And because the funds were never actually sent over to Bitfinex, the funds were not sent from the bank of Bitfinex over to the bank of Tether, which is how it would go normally. So that the tokens are created on the Tether Treasury wallet, and then the funds are sent over once they're purchased from the Bitfinex bank account to the Tether bank account. There's a lot of misconception at the moment around what the USD balance represents on Bitfinex's exchange. A lot of people seem to think that they're tethers. They're not. I mean, at least from what I'm looking at over the weekend. So those are dollars that are actually in a Bitfinex bank account, and the tethers that are out there on the network are backed by dollars in a Tether bank account. So let's go into how the hack occurred. So first of all, the reason we can speak a bit more freely about this for two reasons. Number one, I didn't actually sign an NDA with Tether. I signed it with iFinex, and I reached an agreement with the management and the legal team that I just said, look, with all due respect, we had this conversation when I first started with iFinex. I'm not a big fan of NDAs. I like transparency. I like to speak freely. And so they were like, okay, look, Chris, we trust you. So very much this relationship right now is based on trust. The second reason is, at the moment, there are no victims of this hack other than Tether themselves, because the funds were not belonging to a customer. So it's not like any customers received any losses. So I think we can speak quite freely about it. There will be a report, no doubt, sent to law enforcement. We're going through it, and there's some interesting features I can talk to you about. But that's why we can speak a bit more freely about this one. Okay, so Paolo Arduino is the CTO of Bitfinex. He went through the Tether server because he wanted to look at how it was set up and how this could have happened. We believe that there was a malicious binary that was on the server. We don't know how it got there just yet. That was used to create an entry in the MySQL database that allowed for the capturing and the sending of the tokens. So the reason it was able to get the tokens in the first place is because the private key, although encrypted on the hard drive, was not encrypted in memory. So if the hacker was able to get into memory, he would have been able to get the password for the private key. And then from there, he was able to basically send the tokens out to himself on the network. And that is actually, it's actually pretty simple. That is pretty much what happened. So we believe there was a malicious binary. We haven't examined everything yet because that takes time forensically to go through it. But we believe that he set himself up a new database entry as a new user, and was then able to assign himself the coins and was then able to send the coins out. None of the customer funds on the Tether TO website were affected because they're encrypted with the actual customer's password, as I understand it. So that those funds were safe, and they basically shut down the server, put it into stasis. So the actual binary, we think, probably would have opened up a reverse shell. So that's the opposite of like SSHing into a server. What would have happened is the attacker would had something running on the server that then would have called out to perhaps another server that he was running, and then he would have been able to execute commands in order to take them off. Now, Tether, I'm sure, will be keen to point out that this was a hot wallet, and never put so many funds in the hot wallet that you should not be prepared to lose. But that is, for me, I was fuming. Like when I heard about it, you should not be losing 1 cent, in my opinion, and it's not defensible at all. So that's my position on it. And I'm not a big fan of PR. Maybe I can go into the next stage of what I think needs to be said, which is that I had a lot of my friends, people that I've known for years, reaching out to me, sending me private messages saying, Chris, what's going on? I mean, I know maybe it's all bullshit, but this could be really bad for your reputation, all this stuff going around about the tethers being fake and so on. So I said, well, first of all, okay, now that I'm hearing it from people that I respect. Initially, yeah, I was disposed to thinking that it was fairly conspiracy theory, but I think we should extend, or at least I'm going to extend, a principle of charity, right, to the people making these arguments. But I need to deal with facts, right? I can't deal with people sending me like, pleas to emotion and saying, well, I can't believe it, you're involved with these scammers. A lot of these points that are being raised beg the question, I don't know. I need first-hand evidence. And if someone's accusing my employer of being involved in fraud, I think it behooves me to do my own research and actually go and test it. And in fact, it was Giancarlo's idea, the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, to say, actually, when I'm back in the UK, come round, I'll happily show you the bank accounts. And well, okay, so what could I do? I could walk away and say, no, actually, I don't want to see this for myself. But no, I think the responsible thing for me to do is to check facts and verify them. Why am I doing it? I'm doing it for me. All right. So the first thing is, I can't audit this thing. I'm not an accountant, but I think I want to do this because I want to know. And Giancarlo wanted me to know. He said, I want you to do this. And for anyone out there who's expecting me to say, oh, don't worry, everybody, the funds are safe. I could do a Roger Ver parody video. A few people mentioned that. That's not how this works. That can't be how this works. You can trust, but you can't verify. If you know me for years and you want to use what I say as a data point, you can. But I want to see for myself how things are working, because up until now, I've had almost no sort of knowledge of the finance, certainly from the fiat side of things. I only see things really from the crypto, and I spend time in here. I do the community management. And in terms of charging, I charge about $2,000 a month, sometimes a bit more if there's extra expenses and extra things I have to do. But if I'm just sat in here talking to you guys, just bumping up support tickets, I don't really see myself adding a whole lot of value. So I'm going to reevaluate that anyway with the legal team and figure out what that is. But for now, I just said, yeah, if you are willing to let me look through the bank statements, I would appreciate that for my own, my own reassurance, and I want to go through it. And so I started that process over the weekend. And then really for in the future, yes, of course, you should be skeptical because I'm being compensated by iFinex. And so you should certainly, exercise caution there. But I think probably the solution is that, at least in the interim, and Flibber, maybe you can come in here and talk about some of these ideas, actually getting people like Charlie Lee to join us. Now, I know that when the PR put out stuff, they were talking about getting journalists to review the books under NDA. I would just suggest that, like I said at the beginning, I'm not a big fan of NDAs. I'm open to suggestions from you guys about, striking the right balance between transparency and privacy and getting that balance right. But also I want to know, I don't want to really gauge the temperature in the community from what I get from a bunch of newly set up Twitter accounts. I want to know from people that are willing to speak to me on voice in here what your concerns are, and if there's anything I can do to be of service. Because if there isn't anything I can do, if I'm just going to create more noise in the situation and not add anything to it, then I would quite gladly not comment any further on it. So please come at me with your questions and suggestions.
So Chris, I have a question about just the facts, if we could clear something up real quick. Could you just state for the record what the address for the Treasury wallet is?
The one that was used on that day, which hasn't been used since. Yeah, I can get you that. One sec.
Chris, I really
Chris, I have
appreciate
another.
you in this regard. Sorry.
Chris, I have a question about something you mentioned earlier in the conversation. You said that the address was multi-sig 1 for 1.
Yeah.
Jimmy Song on his videos discovered that the address was multi-sig 3 private keys. So what's the reason for the discrepancy there?
Yeah, I did ask for clarification from the guy that was set up the admin on the server, so I can have to go back to him if he's been wrong on that. So there's the actual original wallet that's used to issue the tethers, which is a multi-sig. That's correct, and that's signed in an offline fashion. So the private keys are held offline with HSMs. And then there's the key that's in the actual treasury wallet that the funds were sent to. And that's the one I just posted in there, starting 31 OKFF, I was told was a single signature. It only required one. Now, if that's not true, I can go back and test that.
So that wallet was created the day of the hack, and it had never been used as the treasury wallet before. So did you get an explanation for why that wallet was created that day? Why they changed their procedures, I guess?
Okay, let me look at it.
I'll post the link. The link.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, I've got it
wallet,
here.
and you
Yeah,
can tell me if it's the wrong one.
Yeah, I've got it here. No, I can't. I can't right now. I can see it, and I've got it as a data point, and I can ask why that decision was made. Yeah, well, we don't know right now. And that's going to be subject to, I've suggested to Giancarlo that we put a bounty up for it, and he's agreed in principle. It's just about agreeing how much that bounty should be. But yeah, I would like to know that too, and preferably for that server to be forensically examined. Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
I mean, from what I see, the multi-sig wallets can be one of two at minimum, so still one sign is needed, but at least two addresses are being used to make that multi-sig.
Yeah, I mean, he may have meant that the it was one of two, or as two of two, and both the keys were on the server at the same time. I'll get clarification. Yeah, this is the 30 million USDT hack. Okay. Happened on the 19th. Yeah, Paolo did not set up the server initially. This was a legacy server that was set up from before. So I mean, he came in, took over it, took a look through it, and was sort of drip feeding me information as he was learning. It took him about three days to go through it.
So is this like an isolated machine? Like this isn't, there's nothing to do with any of the Phoenix stuff, anything like that?
No, every server is ring fenced, even for each cryptocurrency that's used as well. Yeah, thanks guys for your suggestions of help with any kind of white hack work or anything, any kind of services you can offer. That'd be much appreciated. Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate that. I'm going to take you up on it. Do you guys want to explore possible solutions in terms of getting people to take part in, going over the books? I mean, I'm hesitant to call it auditing per se, but is there anything you think that I can, suggest to the management team that might be helpful?
Well, Chris, one idea I had was that, I could bring my Chromebook and we could do a live continuous video, unedited, and of like pressing the reset button on the back of the Chromebook, since it takes like 2 seconds to completely reset it. And then from there, then have, Giancarlo log into the bank accounts and then verify, just all in one continuous footage that all the money is there in the bank accounts. Maybe do a transaction just to verify, that it is there. And then, Thoughtcoin likes that. And then, you correspond, you just tally up live in one clip, how it's, how much money's in the bank, how many tethers there are, and be like, oh look, it matches or whatever. Obviously, you'd have to edit out, you'd have to blur out some of the banking details, for privacy and whatever. But that was one idea I had.
Who else would you like to see? Because one of the criticisms is that so far it's just shareholders and people that work at Finex, which is a perfectly valid point. But is there anybody or a group of people in the community that you guys feel that you can sort of trust? Yeah.
I think maybe you could.
There is that Wall Street.
Take Charlie Lee.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking Charlie Lee. I don't know what to. Excuse me. I don't know what to make of this NDA issue, and I want to get your guys' feedback on
Phoenix.
it.
I'm sorry.
Oh no.
Keep talking, Chris, please.
Yeah, keep talking.
I want to know what you guys think about the NDA. So my frustration is that, as I said, I'm not a big fan of NDAs. A couple of weeks ago, I started saying, look, guys, I just want to speak to, some of these bankers, and I want to get to the bottom of, why this is. And so they introduced me to a couple of people in the industry, and I sort of said, okay, can you give me the situation and tell me what's going on? Why are people not willing to give out banking details and stuff like this? So the way it was put to me, and this is almost sort of word for word, was one banker said, look, when you create a spotlight, you create costs, and people don't like being put in the spotlight. Banks have to do business with other banks, and if they feel like you're doing business with some crypto businesses, then they feel that puts you at a higher risk. And so that was how it was relayed to me. My thinking is that it's fairly short-termist to think that the banking details aren't going to get out eventually, especially if this spotlight is here and it's not going away. And so, yes, there needs to be something of sustainability to all of this. You need to think, longer term. But I think it was suggested that the PR guy, this chap called Ron, that's sort of taking over, he's sort of been asking journalists to get involved. But then there's this NDA thing. So I want to know what you feel about the NDA and getting the right balance between transparency and privacy. Because also there's one other point that was raised with me as well, was that customers sometimes were having bank accounts closed down because the name of the bank was revealed. And if they were using that bank, that might get added to a blacklist. And as a result, they couldn't, they didn't want to take that risk. And it wasn't that they were doing anything illegal. It was a commercial decision that the bank was making.
Yeah, I mean, I put this guy here in the chat, Paul Vigna, Wall Street Journal reporter, does Bitcoin, Ethereum, that kind of stuff. He might also be a guy. I don't know, he seems to tweet me a lot.
All right.
This is another idea.
But does anybody have any thoughts on the NDA?
I mean, depends how much you will be able to say or how much not.
Non-disclosure agreement. Oh yeah. Yeah, that was what I was saying before with what the banker was saying and what I've heard before, which is that the financial privacy of the customer is, and something I think within this community has always been fairly sacrosanct. We have a lot of new users now, and I think there is certainly a push for more of like, well, we need these cryptocurrency exchanges to be more regulated. And with that, I think a lot of the voices that were advocating for financial privacy before are largely outnumbered now by people that are very much sort of pro-regulation, and they want to see, see things change, and maybe, not have these exchanges all over the world operating. Like, I think that the way the banks feel, particularly in the US, is that they have to pay a lot of upfront costs. They have to pay, for all the regulatory, fees to gain entry to that market. And when they see startups come along with sort of new technology and they're pretty agile, and if they're set up offshore, they feel like it's an unlevel playing field, right? They feel like, well, we paid for access to this big US market, and then you're coming along, and then you're cheating almost, right? And it's not cricket, as we would say in English, in British English. So I sort of see that point of view, and I also see that, why a lot of customers wouldn't necessarily want the bank details to be disclosed, because they would fear that they would be shut out from the banking. Yeah, no worries. So I haven't really heard, I've heard obviously the voices of the critics talk about the NDA issue. I've said what I think about the NDA, but I wouldn't mind knowing what some of you think as traders.
I think a lot of the information that's been brought out in terms of, being called quote unquote evidence is circumstantial, if at all. I mean, people are just, it seems like, I think most of the people here would agree that we've seen a pretty coordinated effort to tar and feather both Phoenix and Tether at the same time. And without the actual hack happening, that couldn't have been done at a more perfect time. I guess I'll just leave it at that. But most of the information that's being thrown around as evidence is not evidence. It's just accusations and bullshit. And I think most people see that. I don't know what the correct balance of, NDA versus audit versus whatever is reasonable, but I would be very careful at giving in too much to a bunch of this stuff. And I say that not knowing how much it has impacted directly the business of Phoenix and Tether. So I'll leave that at that. But I think a very good high-end PR firm that deals with these sorts of corporate situations would be a good idea. Because a lot of what these guys are accusing you guys of have zero documentation, zero evidence, and zero witnesses to back it up. It's just shit they're finding and posting screenshots of.
Yeah, everything I've seen so far was already publicly available. I guess that's my frustration with it. Like, I'm not finding things that are like things that I can go off and test and verify for myself. And like in science, generally, in order to make a useful claim, it has to be falsifiable, right? You have to be able to do something with it. And I think for some critics, they'll never be happy. Unless the auditor is one of the top three out of the US. And even then they'll say, well, Enron had the same thing and it was audited and it was able to do things. I don't know how you solve the problem of proving a negative, proving the absence of a liability. I also heard another rumor, which was that even though Bitfinex couldn't get banking, it was able to borrow a lot of dollars in order to buy the fake Tether tokens. Does that make sense? So there was the Tethers were basically backed by borrowed money from a bank, which would be like something like $700 or $800 million or something right now, 800 million or more. I'm not sure about the feasibility of that, or what kind of bank would lend a crypto business $800 million. Yesterday I logged into the banking for Tether, and I saw the money there on the screen. But what am I looking at? I'm looking at a screen with pixels. You test it by actually trying to move the money around and seeing that the money can move, and obviously going through all those details and looking through the list of customers that are, sending money in and redeeming and so on and so forth. My actual suggestion, in case you're interested, to the Tether team was that they actually do a public redemption, and I managed to find a customer that was interested in doing a redemption. But what I'm being told at the moment is that the reason why the tethers aren't being destroyed is because we're in a massive bull run and people are demanding them, and so they can't keep up with the supply. You know, new money is coming in all the time. I think Sean Carlo is here as well. He just came in.
Like I say, everybody seems really positive on Twitter and here about the Chromebook idea. I think Big Lambda has got a really good point. We need a customer who bought millions of USDT to explain why they did it. That's a good idea too.
Yeah, I mean, these are the kind of ideas. I mean, Sean Carlo is in here. I don't know if he's able to speak or not, but these ideas are very welcome right now, because I hear one thing on social media and I get something very different in these chat rooms, on Telegram, in here, on the Mumble server. Yeah, it's very tribal, and I can't. It's nothing, you know. It's no disrespect if you've tweeted at me and I haven't responded, because I'm getting like hundreds and hundreds of tweets. So I can't go through. It's like a DDoS on my attention. My senses are kind of overloaded with all this stuff. And Nomad is here as well.
Yeah, was there some news or was something said here that caused this? Because I was in the trading dojo and someone said there was some FUD and they wouldn't say what it was.
Yeah,
no, there was no I guess there wasn't connection with that.
Go to the dojo if you want to talk price action right now.
Yeah, hey Chris, how's it going? My suggestion is.
Oh, you cut out.
Sorry, I took the mic badge from him.
Yeah, so I think that guy from the Wall Street Journal, I think he'd be a good guy because he could do a good publication on it as well, maybe. And he seems very open about stuff like that.
Yeah, Aaron Van Verdum as well has been suggested, and Carl Torpio as well is someone I would think about.
Yeah, my suggestion was to give Kyle Torpy access to a customer that can basically break down the experience of buying Bitcoin through USDT, but why they would do that in a large quantity. And I think I know the reason, but I've never really been able to verify it.
Yeah. Yeah, Jimmy Song as well. I don't have a problem at all with Jimmy. I think I've always had good interactions with him.
Yeah.
So I also passed some commentary as well about bystanders and basically three narratives that run. So whenever the press love to publish stories of, you know, wars of conflicts between, you know, person A and person B, or group A and group B, and those sort of civil war narratives, you know, they get you a lot of clicks and a lot of hits, and it's really a story war. It's basically a war of narratives. And always when you're thinking about this, I try to think about the bystander. Like, what does the average person on the street coming into this think, and what impression are they basically left with? And the thing about this impression of fear that often gets left, especially when you're in a bull run and the price has gone up a lot, is that fear often taxes the mind with thoughts that it doesn't necessarily need to be occupied with. You end up worrying about things that never end up becoming a problem. And my sort of focus is trying to be, okay, if a lot of these narratives are being created in order to try and create market distortion, in order to try and create fear and uncertainty in the market, so that people are kind of given this idea that, you know, something bad could happen, or if only some headline was written, right, that could trigger a sharp sell-off, like, oh my god, maybe it's true, maybe the tethers are really fake, oh my gosh, and then people don't have enough time to go through the facts. They just sell because there's a headline, a scary headline, just like we see with the China ban, right? That's my main issue. Like, I don't want to see this story becoming a strategy for that.
I mean, in any narrative, the latter one wins, truth or not. I mean, that's the reality of PR. So that's why I recommended maybe seeking out a skilled firm in these sorts of matters that can handle sort of approaching that in a correct way. I think that might be money well spent as well, because these dickheads are just going to continue to spread bullshit that isn't evidence, is just opinion. And they're getting louder. I mean, you've seen the social metrics, as probably many of us have. So.
Chris, I was curious, how sure are you that Bloomberg's going to have an article tomorrow?
Yeah, the Bloomberg reached out and did talk to us, but I don't want to preempt what the journalist has written. I think we should give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's see what he comes out with. I think we're fairly sure he's coming out with it tomorrow. At least that's what I was told. The reason I gave people a heads up about it is because, again, I didn't want this to be some shock headline. I wanted people to be prepared. The same with the hack, and the Tether hack kind of timed in as well with the Nathaniel Popper piece in the New York Times, which was sort of being delayed day after day. And lots of things have been happening on the back end that have queued up quite nicely with things, in the public sphere and on social media. And I don't want to be paranoid or anything. I just want to keep my wits about me and want to stay, keep my field of vision quite broad and keep my mind open.
Thanks.
Okay, guys. Oh, I liked the idea if customers who have actually used the service want to talk it publicly. I'd be quite interested in that. If you would just want to ping me, reach out to me. Yeah, I'm recording it, Wonky, on my end, and also it's been recorded on the live stream as well. Oh, the new trading pairs. I haven't even been looking at that right now. But Giancarlo will actually be able to speak about it, I think.
Yeah, Chris. I mean, just for me, next time you see those guys, if you could get some clarification on like the actual, I guess maybe some of the actual details on the hack, why they switched their procedures on that day, that would be interesting, because they haven't really, their statements didn't really address it. So
okay, so why they used that particular address to send it to?
Right. Yeah. If you're saying that's the Treasury wallet, that's not the typical one. So I was just curious.
Yeah. Because up until about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I actually hadn't even read the Tether white paper. So I knew of it and I knew it existed, but I wasn't like in the chat room and I was never really dealing with it. So
yeah.
I'll ask.
Can I ask a question not regarding Tether recent hack, but about nature of USDT itself?
Yeah. Okay.
I maybe sound ignorant. Maybe I don't know enough information that will provide me to answer to my question. But no matter that, I want to ask when this USDT being every time being created and being transferred to Bitfinex. So every time this amount of USDT is I don't remember a word in English. They are obligated by the US dollars. So some person inputted real money to create this USDT to input them into exchange. Is that right?
Yeah, and that entity is Bitfinex a lot at the moment, because if a customer wants to withdraw USDT from Bitfinex, Bitfinex needs to make a bank transfer from its bank account to the Tether bank account, and then Tether issues some tokens that it then sends from its hot wallet to the Bitfinex hot wallet, and then that gets assigned to customers that want to withdraw.
So some random guy, any guy with money can come to you, say that he have a lot of, he have money, with it he want to transfer to Bitfinex in form of USDT, and you provide him with this service to exchange it to USDT.
Yeah, he has to be verified though. It has to be KYC'd and AML'd.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And so one person is asking if I sell BTC on Finex, do I hold USD? I guess you mean USD or USDT. So you hold USD. Yeah, and USD Tether runs on the Omni protocol. Mm-hmm. I don't know. And like I said, I don't really want to preempt it. I just know that Bloomberg approached the PR team, or I think they approached Bloomberg, and Bloomberg were already working on a story. And a customer had reached out to them with a support ticket that they had issued with Tether, claiming that they weren't able to withdraw their Tether. However, there was a few issues. First of all, the customer didn't have any Tethers to withdraw in the first place. And when we went through the ticket, a number of alarm bells came up. I'm not actually involved in that ticketing process, so I can't speak firsthand. But my understanding was that it was not a bona fide request. Like, he was basically just trying to get information as much as he could on a support ticket, so he could show a journalist and create a story. I mean, that's how it appeared to me anyway. I believe that one of the PR people did. I didn't personally.
So you mentioned that there's no victim here, really, other than kind of Tether itself and the brand there. And we know the attacker didn't actually walk away with any money, right? So is it safe to assume then that the motive was just to cause kind of disruption and uncertainty?
Yeah, we're getting into speculation. I should add that right now those funds are frozen because Omni. I posted a link at the top of this conversation to the update on Tether with a critical announcement, and so the Omni Foundation issued an update for the exchanges, which they agreed to, which essentially froze the coins, and I think that was a fairly straightforward process for them to get agreement on. So in the sense that there are no victims, what I mean is those tokens weren't assigned to a customer; they were unassigned at that time. So yes, in that sense, Tether is the victim. If we want to speculate on the hacker's motives, could we project, like, what did this hacker really think he was going to get away with? Was it basically designed to make Tether look bad? It's possible, but that's just speculation. I mean, it's just hard. I suppose what would prompt that speculation is, well, what was he really expecting to get away with?
Well, in the announcement that they released, they said that the motive was to disrupt the market. That was in Tether's own announcement on their own website.
Right.
So does that mean, that to me that imply, do they know the identity of the hacker then?
No, I certainly haven't seen any evidence for a firm identity of him.
Chris, what specifically is being done to ensure this can't happen again?
Yeah, so the dev team, I think both at Tether and Omni are working on an update, and I'm following them in the chat room, but I think they're mostly just coding at the moment.
Andy from the chat is asking, I know you spoke about it already, but asking, did you see the bank account?
Yeah, I have, but with the caveat that just because I've seen the bank accounts doesn't mean that you are to walk away with like, oh, it's okay. You know, that I said at the top, I'm doing this because I want to see it for myself. I want to be able to test things that I'm hearing it from one source, and I want to be able to come over here and test it with what I'm seeing. I want to trust my eyes. You know, I don't want to just, you know, go off what other people are telling me. Now, I don't know how useful that process of me doing that is going to be, because, like I said, we came up with this before, which was because I work there, because I work at iFinex. Of course, I'm going to be biased, right? You should be skeptical of everybody. I mean, it doesn't matter who they are. I mean, everyone should be held accountable. So the ideas were banded around about, you know, maybe doing a video or a recording, and we suggested some names of people like Charlie Lee, for example, that could go through it. Light Rider on Twitter is asking, are you reporting the hack? Do you have a case number? No, not yet. There was also this additional information about the coins that were used to pay the fees in the Tether hack being linked to the Bitstamp hack in January 2015. So Bjorn, who does a lot of the coin tracking stuff, and I are yet to go through that. Yes, we're aware of it. However, I would point out, just looking through the analysis that was done on Reddit, that it wasn't actually from a specific address. It was from a cluster of addresses that the fees were sent to the account that was linked to the Tether hack. So we can't make too many assumptions. In other words, you can't automatically say that it was the same person. But Bjorn and I are going to go through it together probably next week. Okay, so someone's asking me in a PM about knowledge of the hacks. So maybe you follow me, or maybe you've been into the other chat room. So yeah, I was on heightened alert before the hack happened. I'm quite a paranoid person anyway, and so I tend to think a lot. I'm quite a thoughtful person, and I had my wits about me. I saw a lot of new accounts on Twitter, and they were sort of posting certain things. And I didn't know where an attack was going to come from. I just had my senses about me that something might happen. And yeah, and then it did. And I knew that the article was being written for the New York Times, and I was very worried. I was like, okay, you know, things are going to start lining up here. I don't know about motives. It's perfectly okay to ask what someone's motive might be for making a certain, you know, allegation or assertion. There's nothing wrong with it, but the problem with ad hominems is it's not a bright line fallacy, right? Like sometimes somebody's motive and intentions is relevant to a discussion if they're bringing it up, if there are commercial considerations. Let's not pretend like lots of money isn't involved here. I just don't think that's where you start, right? If somebody's making a serious allegation, that allegation should be taken seriously. And you do need to extend a principle of charity. A lot has been said you know, about Tether and about Bitfinex, and I've enumerated it all, but I'm going to start with the most serious one, right? The one which has the most damaging consequences, which is this allegation of fraud. And I'm going to start there, and I'm going to take it one step at a time, because if I get bogged down in some of the questions about whether or not, you know, Bitfinex have been bad at PR, I don't think that's a particular thing to be embarrassed about personally. But let's say that was one of the allegations, or that they didn't post up all the team members on the various websites. Well, that's one thing, right? But that's nowhere near as serious as the other things. And if the more serious allegations are basically just being used as a hook in order to get people's attention in the first place, so that you can make less serious allegations, I will not be impressed. I won't be impressed if I find out that there's no substance to the claims whatsoever, and that essentially it's just being used to what's called poison the well. It's where you make a very serious allegation against somebody in order to besmirch them and then make some other arguments. But principle of charity also states that you should give people the benefit of the doubt until you give them reason otherwise. Yeah, okay. So guys, thanks a lot for your feedback and also your nice comments in here. It's very different to what I receive on social media. I'm human after all, so I have feelings. If you cut me, I will bleed. And so I do appreciate it. And let me know if I'm helping. And if I'm not, also tell me that too. And tell me what I can do to improve it.
Yeah, Chris, can you comment on the things that Fliber posted on chat?
Yeah, let me go.
Yeah, thanks for the deep.
Oh, so Flibber, you're saying from Twitter, someone asked why the hacker didn't use this technique to steal other coins. Well, that's because first of all, the Tether is a totally separate environment. And the CTO at Finex had not set up that server. That server was set up by another team of developers from prior, and I haven't got all those details yet. But in any case, every coin has to have its own segregated server. The reason is well, as we saw with Bitcoin Gold, if some malicious code ends up in one of those cryptocurrencies, well, what better way to get a Trojan horse into an exchange's platform, right? Because then you can just ship out an update and you can say, okay, as somebody who runs a coin that is listed, you can say, oh, ping all the exchanges, we need to roll out an update. And it's an emergency and it's very important, and then the exchanges install it and it ends up infecting their other machines. So you have to, one of the benefits of public key cryptography is that you don't actually have to store the private key on the server, particularly when it's a cold wallet or a warm wallet if it's with HSMs. So and then of course it's even better practice if you segregate all of those servers as well.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I really appreciate you being on here and debriefing us all.
Yeah, cool. And I'm going to keep coming back as well. I don't know how frequently, because it really depends on me getting enough facts and information that I can relate to you so that it's substantive and so there aren't any gaps in my knowledge. I mean, there were gaps today when you were asking me about the coin listings and so on, or like when you were asking about the details of the multi-sig of the Treasury wallet, for example. But anytime that you give me a question like that, I'm always going to go back to the team. The other comment I would make is that I have defended quite rigorously Bitfinex internally, and honestly, so I just want everyone to be quite clear. I don't just dismiss things. My personal view is that everyone should have the ability to ask hard questions and to hold people accountable. And I don't want it to be thought that just because somebody is damaging to somebody that I work for, that I don't play devil's advocate, that I don't take the position and assume the position of somebody that I might be at odds with initially, ostensibly, take on that position myself as if I held the same view, and put that to the management team. I do. And sometimes that gets as heated as the conversations that you see every day on social media. I'll be in here, I guess. Twitter's almost useless now because I'm getting hundreds of messages a day, and it's becoming very difficult. Maybe PM me or Twitter, and I can follow you back, and then you can DM me. But otherwise, I'll be in here at sort of certain times. I just won't necessarily be able to get back to everybody, straight away. Thanks. My pleasure.
I've got a question if you have a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay talking about Bitfinex and their current Polish banking?
Yeah, Crypto Capital. I spoke to them briefly over the weekend, and I'm going to speak to the guys there. I think I've set up a meeting for Monday or Tuesday. And they seem like nice guys to me. It's basically a payment processor. So they set up an IBAN number for Bitfinex, and they've been used for years there. So yeah, I mean, he seemed, like I say, same with the other banker, right? Basically said the same thing.
That sounds reasonable. So your position is Bitfinex is using Crypto Capital as a payment processor, similar to how BTCE used to use another payment processor to get USD in. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. Segregated accounting. So every customer of theirs gets their own IBAN number.
That makes sense to me. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Wrap it up for now, and then, yeah, I'll try and get back to you in the next few days.
Thanks for everything, Chris.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time. I'm going to stop the recording.